when would you, in 1994, 98, you didn't have enough knowledge, experience about this kind of economy that we're now living in, because no longer living in the economy that we're living in when colonizers arrived, to actually say, okay, now that I've got my piece of land, this is what I was going to do. And so it was very important and critical for government to have an local economic development plan together with the land restitution.
Virtual Mkuku. Sis MANDISA MASHEGO, thank you so much for last week's episode. We touched on the cholera outbreak in Hammanskraal. We touched on Honorable Ace Magashule being, I don't want to say expelled from the ANC, but we also touched on Big Pharma. We touched on anti-vaxxing. We touched on, what else did we touch on?
We spoke a little bit about good foods to eat that are medicinal and
ma'am.
also nutritious.
So have you been? How's the week been?
We spoke about Hammanskraal and the tragedy of the cholera, and condolences to all the families actually of Hammanskraal who have been losing people. I think more than 20 now, yeah. We spoke about quite a lot of stuff.
Yeah, it was a beautiful episode. A lot of people loved it. Thank you very much for all of your comments and your feedback. That was quite incredible. Junior started. It is now cold. Oh, we also spoke about the Maponyamo Uber tech.
The Uber
taxi
that
drivers.
nonsense, yeah, the sabotage there, whatever it is, the murder. Is it murder? They were shooting people, so we don't know if people died.
So today, I just would like for us to talk about land.
Yeah.
We are currently building the Ngonyama Lifestyle Estate in the North Riding Equestrian Estates. We've started a stokvel called the Noble Property Stokvel, which is a partnership between Ekasi Noble Property Development and the Stokvela.com. Check the link in the description. Check out what the Stokvela is all about. Read the Constitution. Get a legal mind and opinions so you can do your own due diligence before you invest in anything. The Stokvela is doing really well. We are closing it very soon with only 1,000 members that we're looking for, and we're doing very well. We're doing land from 150 squares, 200 squares, 250 squares, 300 squares, 350 squares, 400 squares. Other people are buying double stands. People invest from 200,000 to secure their lands, 250,000, 300,000, etc. But those who could not afford, who also don't want to own land, who don't want to hold any title deeds, they said, why don't you form a stokvel? That's why we formed the Noble Property Stokvel. Click the link in the description. It'll take you to our stokvel. You can invest from as low as 10,000 rands, 20,000 rands, 50,000, 100,000. It's totally up to you. So we're talking about land today. Now, there was the Land Act back in 1913.
Yeah.
And I think that's where we should start, because a lot of us talk about 1654. A lot of us know South African history and how Abo Jan van Riebeeck, namakhosi wakubo.
Thina labo siyabashare.
Benze nje lento abazenzile nje la ekhaya. And it's always been a struggle for black people to get back their land. Maybe let's start there. What is the Land Act, the 1913 Land Act?
So the 1913 Land Act was basically a culmination of a series of land fights, struggles, wars, right? Number one, post the arrival of the various colonizers, whether it was the French, the British, the Portuguese. And it was also a culmination of centuries. Let's say maybe how many centuries? 1913, 1813 was 1 century. 1713 was 1 century. So just over 2 centuries of real battles for land, and dispossession, and even the establishment of governments, the British governments and all of that. And so it was a culmination of, it was a result of a culmination of various land wars between the natives, ourselves, and the colonizers, who obviously got into, you come into somebody's territory without a clear mandate, and there's disagreements, and you start to encroach on land, you're going to fight over the land. So it was really a culmination to say, look, and it was also a precursor, rather post the establishment of the Union, which was established in 1910. And we all know that was all around, the Union was about the British and the Afrikaners trying to find each other to say, how can we govern this territory that we have now taken over profitably without us also getting into our own fights? As you know, there were lots of fights between the British and the Boers.
Yeah.
Some of them happened independently between the two of them. Others happened as, like, for instance, the Bahorutsoe clan. northwest Botswana sort of area, where there was a battle between the Bahurutse people and the British. But the Bahurutse then teamed up with the Dutch at the time, the Afrikaners, to say help us with the British, and then in exchange. You see, so there's a very complex story around the land issue that all of us need to be also honest about, because there were also, besides land that was just violently taken over, there were lands that were given to the Afrikaners by our forebears and the British for whatever reasons, as part of maybe a settlement post a war, a battle, like in KZN it happened. And fortunately in KZN, because there's one sort of monarchy, like all the Izinkosi, they report to Silo, it's easier there to track those agreements, and they are clear, they are known. The Zulu people don't deny them, nor do the British, right? So there are those situations. So the 1913 Land Act was following the 1910 union between the British and the Afrikaners, how they're going to split the country, into different territories. So Free State was Afrikaans, Natal was English, parts of Western Cape and Eastern Cape that we know now, the Cape Colony also was divided. And so it was a culmination of that, and it was also, by the way, I like to add this extra narrative, it was also a consolidation of colonial power by the British. Because if you think about it, it's 1910, it's the Union, 1912 is what? Your favorite people? I don't hate the ANC, by the way. I mean, they're part of our history. There's nothing we can do about them. We just need to diminish their power, but because it's not good for our development, not because we hate them. But the ANC was then established as the native, I can't remember, I always forget the full name of the ANC when they established.
Yeah.
In 1912. And how were they established? The British had a big role to play, and they brought together all the traditional authorities at the time that were recognized of South Africa. I don't know if the Khoi were part of it, they may have been, and the San. But all the indigenous authority, traditional leadership of South Africa to say, look, you guys organize yourself. We're fighting, but we want an organized fight. Because masifike eSwatini, silwa namaswati. Sifike KZN silwa namaZulu. Sifike ngaseLesotho silwa nabeSotho. Free State, etc. Like namaXhosa. So we now, and after each fight, you know how it is, man to keep an inkani. You kind of send khulum. I don't know what's wrong with men. You're so destructive. It's your nature. You shoot each other, kill each other, and then talk. Are you not supposed to talk to avoid the shooting and killing? Anyway, so then the 1913 Land Act is a culmination of all of these things. And it's not difficult to deny the conspiracy that the ANC was established precisely to allow the Land Act of 1913 to be promulgated by the British and the Boer together, and for it to be successfully done to achieve the goals of the British and the Boers. That's the conspiracy, and I also hold that view, because the ANC didn't actually fight against the establishment of the Land Act. It's only Charlotte Maxeke who marched to Free State, which was the headquarters of the Afrikaner government, to Bloemfontein, to actually say no. We don't want the Dompas, we don't want this, as women. And women went on their own and fought on their own and marched on their own. There was never, ever an organized fight by the ANC. They must tell me when it happened about land. They can say the reason they established was about land. That's not true. Why was the Land Act passed? And why was it passed by Amakhosi wonke asevumelene with the ANC? Black middle class, abantu basemasontweni, etc., abafundisi nani, to agree to say, no, we want to fight together. But exactly a year later, after you formed an entity to fight, the British and the Boers are so bold to establish an act and say, no, we are now confirming that lo mhlaba lo sinthathele wona accessiwe wenu nani niya accepta wethu. Owenu yilawa amaBantustans. There was a lot of mess. Even the Bantustan land that was the Bantustans were also part of the 1913 Land Act to say, let's establish AMA reserves where black people can live. And in that process, a lot of people also lost land in the traditional areas, in the Bantustan areas, lost other pieces of land to whatever demarcation then the British and the Boer had agreed to. And so the establishment of the Land Act in 1913 was never ever challenged except by Charlotte Maxeke, right up until 1994. When we then promulgated the land restitution, the restitution of land.
The restitution of land rights.
Yeah, the Restitution of Land Act.
Act, yeah.
Land Rights Act, yeah.
Land Rights Act, yeah.
In 94, to now correct this 1913 thing. What an irony.
Now they're saying the ANC was actually established to preside over the Queen's rulership of South Africa, removing the Boers. Mweletsi Mbeki speaks about that. I think there is a video on YouTube, guys. Check that out.
Yeah. Mweletsi says this. I'm very curious to know how long he's been holding that view, because I've been talking about that for quite some years now. To say that if you study, which is what I was saying now, if you study 1910, it's the Union, 1912, it's the ANC forming, bringing together all black people to say, let's fight together under one umbrella. 1913, the British and the Boers together passed the Land Act. How crazy is that? Without any resistance from this newly formed entity that is precisely supposed to be fighting for what? For land. Only Charlotte Maxeke marches with her women, because remember, she was not necessarily a member of the ANC even under its name then, at that time. She was leading a women's movement for all sorts of, to fight against the dompas for women and all sorts of abuses against black African women, right? Removing them from amasimo, tinaiti phela eslimayo, ngesintu, across Africa. Doesn't matter where you go in Africa. There's no man or limayo. The men come to help maybe when the land is still fresh and it needs to be properly worked and rocks and things taken out clean so that it was a but amadoda walim. So we felt, black women are the ones who felt this dispossession much stronger, because we had nowhere to raise our kids, we had nowhere to grow food, we had nowhere to do anything, even our rites of passage. Sometimes we are blocked, you can't go to this river, and this is the nearest river to your place where you were washing your washing, But I want to understand, and I'm not contesting ideas. I'm really happy if Mweletsi Mbeki is saying that, but it's true. You just need to follow the timeline. What happens when? Does not make sense that the ANC forms in 1912, 1913, there's a Land Act. And then, of course, almost 100 years later, 81 years later, the ANC eventually takes this government, which was built for them by the British. Maybe the Boers not so much directly, but the British still has very direct control over the ANC, and that's a reality that all of us must live with. And then they establish and they promulgate this act, and it legitimizes the dispossession of land, and we are still disorganized, and you can see how disorganized we are through the failure of the 1994 restitution of land.
And before
land
the 1994, let's
Act.
go back to 1956 and talk about it for the young people that are out there, especially about 2000, the Women's March, 1956.
Yeah.
What was it for? I know that it was against the
again, it
past
was
laws.
about the dompas.
Yeah.
I mean, now South Africa has moved on. The Land Act, we are strongly in apartheid. The apartheid starts in 1948. South Africa is carrying on as per whatever the way of life at the time. The women really marched again about general, broader women's rights. Women at the time could not get certain jobs. I mean, that was a global situation, you understand. And so it was no different in South Africa. And South Africa being the most industrial country in Africa, in the whole of Africa, obviously the access to jobs on the back of land dispossession and not being able to live your life indigenously. Now you need to get a job, you need to earn money, you need currency. Women then obviously felt the need to now fight and say, look, you've given amadota way to amapas. We've allowed that. They can't go there, they can't go there. Tina, we are not going to tolerate that as women, because we just feel that our your freedom of movement in the process of a population that's now living in two worlds. Almost all black people were living in two worlds around those days. Besinamakaya wethu emakaya sibe nala amalogishi, which are basically the reserves for the mining and whatever other industrial activity was happening. Abanye bahlala emakhishini la basebenza khona, and the frustrating your movement actually has an impact on your entire life, how you raise your family and all of that. And so women felt the need to march and assert their rights in terms of rights to get whatever work they wanted to do, were capable of doing, but they were limited to certain jobs. Women were allowed to move up until that point, right? And then they tried to, look, in 1913, they also imposed the dompas on women, and then women fought, but then they managed to, hold it back, and then they wanted to bring it back, the British, and I don't separate the British and Afrikaner government before 94. I really don't, because I think it was just maybe a tribal clash, because tribalism is at its worst in Europe, as you know. Russia and Ukraine are. Russia is bombing Ukraine, and Ukraine is trying to fight back. It's a tribal war. What else can you call it? And so tribal clashes in Europe have always been much, much more severe. That's why World War I, World War II, and now you have this. And you also had those Eastern wars in the 80s. There were lots of wars in the East, Czechoslovakia, etc. And so the British and the Afrikaner governments were really negotiating. And they did, and something which we failed to do as black people. We can't do it. They were negotiating territory, like I was explaining. When the British, when they sent the Queen to negotiate with the traditional authorities to say form something, and that's how the ANC was formed. It was only really because the Queen, Britain, had put South Africa as part of its colonies anyway across Africa, that eventually then became part of the Commonwealth, right? So Britain because Britain sort of was able to conquer a lot more territories than any other European countries, they sort of like developed this arrogance to say, okay, then we should then conglomerate the whole of Africa under the Commonwealth. So they were building up towards all of that. But there was never really a major fight between them that lasted so long and became so toxic. Okay, there was a concentration camps of the British putting the Afrikaners in concentration camps, etc. Yeah, there were very real, painful wars between them. But very quickly, they started realizing that, oh no, we're the outsiders here. We want to settle here because South Africa is a settler economy for colonizers, unlike other places in Africa that South Africa and Namibia, Zim to some extent, maybe just for 200 years, us much longer, are settler economies. Mozambique was a settler economy to some extent until they had the war with Samora Machel. But the reality is that the British and the Afrikaners very quickly realized that if we don't work together, yes, we can't stand each other, but we can collaborate, still hating each other. We can even split industries. It's not an accident that majority of the property sector, is under Jewish or British companies, right? The mining sector, you can identify the sector because they actually agreed. They negotiated behind the scenes. The Afrikaners formed what is called the Broederbond to do all of this. And so they had a very clear plan, what they wanted to do with the land, which is why they pushed for the Land Act. And then pushed for the ANC to be formed so that they can very clearly be the ones to guide the so-called fight against colonialism of the ANC, because now they are fully in charge of it. Another piece of evidence why I'm saying that the establishment even of the natives, whatever movement, which is now known as ANC, was actually a directive and funded and purely directed by the British, is because within that, a year later, after 1912, when they established, and John Dube was appointed or elected, I don't know what they did, as the first president, the first international visit of John Dube was to go to visit the Queen at Buckingham Palace.
Which is what they still do till today, right?
And when he came back, that's when he was removed as president of the ANC, because people then accused him of having sold out the agreement, to say, go and tell the Queen that we are not going to stop. Yes, we have now formed together, but we're not going to stop fighting for our land. And then when he got there, he said something else. He was like, no, it's okay, guys, you can take some land, but please stop butchering us. Stop killing us. But you can, just reduce the violence. But it's, we can agree. You understand? John Dube didn't say that by accident, and then the same year, the 1913 Land Act is passed. Doesn't matter whether they fired him and then replaced him with Sfako Mahad. Because they said, no, but that was not our mandate. We told you to tell them that we are now fighting. Even that, what kind of a fighting strategy is that? It's a stupid fighting strategy. Go and tell the enemy that we're going to fight. I don't know, if you fight, you fight. You don't need permission from your enemy. And so, yeah, I do agree fully with him. I hold the very same view. And I think there's also Thabo Mbeki wrote a book called A Dream Deferred. And I think in a very diplomatic way, sort of Thabo Mbeki also paints that picture very nicely for you in terms of how the ANC was developed, what happened soon after, immediately before. He does give a nice contextualized historical precursor for the establishment of the ANC, and then what happened after, and then et cetera, up to the point where they followed the PAC to exile. in the early 1960s.
And then the amendments in, I think that was in not 94, but in
2014.
2014.
The Restitution,
the
of,
Restitution
Land
of
Rights
Land Rights
Amendment Act.
Yeah.
Now, okay, so the Restitution Act of 94, we were all happy about, right? If you take yourself back 30 years, we were all happy because we all thought, okay, we're going to have an opportunity. Okay, we were very young. So
I was young,
we were
sure.
leaving this process to Abantu Abadala. I know in my family, both sides, we left it to Abantu Abadala. But our land claim, for instance, as a community now, not as a clan, from my family side, where I grew up in Mayfair and Nasport, was scampered by this corruption and all sorts of crazy things that happened. So the reason there was an amendment act of 2014 was because of these problems that I'm referring to, in practical example that my family experienced, where the entire community, the claim has not been processed as far as we're concerned, because one or two people who are linked to the ANC and who are linked to land claims commissioners or MECs or whoever, political people, basically interfered, and only one or two families got their so-called restitution. Because restitution is basically another word like reparation, just to restore something that was you were dispossessed from. It's the closest word that comes to is restoration. So they then and this is evidence that
reparations,
reparations, even restoration,
restoration,
to restore something that didn't go right before, So so basically, the current government then decided, 2014 to 1994 is how many years? It's almost 20 years. Almost 20 years. 20 years, When they then realized, and this is how we are kept
at bay.
Yes, and
with some sort of hope or promise,
kicking the can down the road and making you feel like, no, we are doing something. And the problem I'm always complaining about, that we are not involved in lawmaking. It's a very serious thing. It doesn't matter what kind of government you have, whether it's black, white, pink, blue, but if you as citizens are not involved in your own lawmaking, amending the laws, repealing the laws, which means deleting a law which no longer applies to society, amending a law which applies but needs amendments, we need to be involved as citizens in that, because our economic rights are violated the way this law has violated our economic rights, because land rights and economic rights are together, right? So they established this Amendment Act because they wanted to deal, one of the biggest issues was the Zulu nation, which is the most coordinated nation in South Africa. I don't care what you say. There is no nation more coordinated than the Zulu nation, even in terms of its hierarchy and the monarchy and all of that. Very coordinated. Agreed that under the former King Goodwill Zwelithini, Tina sifuna uklema going back to 1837. Those are one of the biggest weaknesses of the current of the 1994 Restitution of Land Rights Act.
But didn't they want to go back to 1838?
1837, that's what I'm saying. 1838, somewhere there. 1830s,
Okay.
that's what I'm saying.
Okay,
And then, so this is one of the big reasons that led to the amendments. Because the Land Restitution Act of 1994 doesn't allow you, it only wants you to deal with land that was affected by the 1913 Land Act. How ridiculous. That's going back three generations from 1994? 2 generations. So it's really not enough. It's nearly not enough. And that was the one reason. Then there were other people as well, like I'm making the example of my family and many, many other individuals and families and communities and clans, etc., who had applied to comply with with 1994 one, whose land claim was not processed, or was processed but there was a lot of fraud and corruption. They basically didn't get the land or didn't get the money if they chose the money. Where just basically the process was scampered, and through just a lot of corruption between the land claims commissioners' offices, to some extent the Department of Justice, because that land claims unit falls under justice because it's a court as well, and probably local authorities and these basically the politics, right, and politicians, and also bureaucrats. Because mostly it's the bureaucrats. I mean, I have a friend who's trying to get funding from DBSA. And there's a guy there at DBSA who's asking them for 10,000 Rand for him to process or push the papers. I don't know, some nonsense, right? And so lots of problems happened with the 94 Restitution Act, and then the 2014 was supposed to correct those mistakes. It's gotten worse. It's gotten worse. To accommodate all these problems and to allow people also to resubmit applications. So if you had submitted your application, the closing deadline was 1998. So it was opened, the land restitution process was open from 94 to 1998, and it was closed. And a lot of people complained to say, but we need to gather a lot of information, because when you claim land, you need to go and prove that this is your land. If when you're the only descendant from your let's say your clan, because we lived in broader, our let's say 100 years or so, we still all lived very indigenously, so we lived within communities where it was a clan mostly. Nononge nabaga Mashego in this one area, or nabaga Khoza. Yes, of course, we did live with other people from other areas because we did accommodate. We have a system where even Namaj, you can get land anywhere in a traditional authority. But you find a situation where somebody has no family left. Omunye washada wahamba wayohlala kwazibanibani nosbu ndoda yakhe, and then now this process is opening, so kumele abuyele ekhaya manje to start the process to help ekhaya. Makafika lapha akusana khaya. There's just been so much. So the 4 years wasn't enough. There was another reason they reopened it. When they now reopen it, you would expect that what the land, let's say the Department of Land Affairs and Justice and the commissioners, the provincial land claims commissioners would have said, okay, let's now receive firstly the complaints of people who applied in 98, and then so let's have a system, a structured approach, right? Let's deal now with, but they're not dealing with any of those. They just did that act, ukubhanga amaZulu nalabantu laba abacomplainayo about their unprocessed or corrupted land claims. It was just to lull them into a feeling of we're doing something about it, but nothing was done. As you know, there's lots of problems with the restitution process. There's lots of frustration, and there's just lack of cooperation from the side of government.
But the NC says claim it and have it. And
yeah,
the NC government, obviously the economic discussion.
Yeah.
What do they call it? The spatial development plan.
Yeah. Claim it and have it, Ganjani. Look, I mean, I don't know if you want to go through some of this, just the basic information of what is wrong with the process. In terms of they set up a commission as well on the restitution of land rights. They set up a commission to deal with all these problems, right? To process the amendment, fix the problems, etc. And I don't know if you want me to go through it.
Go through it, please.
Right. So I'm going to quote, this is from a website that deals with the restitution issues. And I'll mention the website just now. But this is what they say. According to the Commission on Restitution of Land Rights, 20,592 claims, individual claims, or at least 25.87% of the total land claims registered with the Department of, I would imagine, Land, have not yet been finalized, right?
And these are the stats, right?
These are the stats.
Yeah.
Yeah? Or the
and which is
settlement...
25.8%, right?
Yeah, which is over 25,000
of
individual claims.
Of the total land claims which are registered with the department.
So which means there's over 100,000 land claims, right? Have not yet been finalized, or the settlement agreement has not been fully implemented. This is a second problem, around 50% of the land that has already been acquired for restitution, right, has still not yet been transferred to the beneficiaries. So those whose land has been maybe the process has been successfully completed, have not had the land transferred to them. 50% of those 100-odd claims. So that's 50,000 or more, right? And then the other problem is several claimants have been waiting for over 10 years for the implementation of their settlement agreement. Now, these are problems from 1994. So in 2014, there's the amendment. What is it going to do? Now, let's look at it this way. What is the economic impact? You're in property development now.
Yeah.
I'm in energy projects that need land, but, we find ways to work around the problems. Without land, you can't basically do anything. I-aeroplane indize emoyeni, iskep esihambe emanzini, kodwa sikhandiwa la. Ngeke usikhande emoyeni. So you really need earth and the world and the space that we live in to
Imithi
properly.
esilaphayo comes from the
Yonke
land.
into ukudla kwethu
Izindlu,
sizalela
property
la.
development, sizalela
There's
la.
gravity. Ingane kumele iwele somewhere. So singcwabela la.
Sitshala la.
Sitshala la, everything, our medicine, our food, our clothes,
Akhela
our
la.
textiles, yonke into. Our entire life is
And also
dependent
the
on earth.
underneath of the land as well, the minerals.
We need oil for energy.
Cobalt,
We need
manganese, ferrochrome, gas, gold, platinum,
gas,
diamond.
electricity. Everything is from natural resources. Everything, whether it's the sun or whatever. So here's the question for me: is that with this frustration, I mean, I want to talk a little bit about umhlaba wakankosi, because I'm involved in that land claim, and please remind me to come back to it. And just I want to give you practical examples.
Yeah.
Of things that are directly impacting us. Our economic progression is frustrated by this Amendment Act and the Land Restitution Act for many, many reasons. Ingonyama Trust, for instance, which was established just before 94, I think 93. Yes, it was part of the negotiation agreements and all of that, because the Zulu people wanted to know, okay, fine, before nenza land we want our land to be untouched, you know. Ingonyama Trust, like I explained earlier, is one of the reasons the Restitution Act had to be done, because Isilo Babuzolithin insisted that no, Tina sifuna ukubuyela, even that has not yet been dealt with, right? Sifuna ukubuyela back to 1837 and claim from there, and they had reasons for that. Now, what are you going to... So all these families that have been waiting for 30 years, let's say, okay, let's be fair, let's say 25 years since they submitted ama claims. Like, for instance, the Ngoyi family, Matafeni. It's not just in Matafeni. Matafeni, it's a 6,000 hectare piece of land. By the way, it includes Kapsawap. It includes that whole area and the forestry. How much economic progress has been frustrated because of these land restitution processes that have been basically deliberately, incompetently, and corruptly handled? Right? Again, back to that, doing the same thing over and over again, hoping for a different result. They had the act, they amended it, the problems are growing. So the law itself of amending hasn't helped. The problems are getting worse. The economic progression of the entire clan Yagangosi, because, by the way, the Land Restitution Rights Act should not lead to further dispossession of people.
Yeah.
It must just deal with the issue of reparation.
And this is in Mpumalanga, we're talking about the
Mpumalanga
Ngoyi clan claims, land claims. Sure.
Yes, which was corrupted, and their land was given to the Mdluli people corruptly. And the Mdluli people know themselves, they accept, which brings a fight between Abantu Baga Mdluli and Abantu Baga Ngoyi.
In Mpumalanga.
Because Abantu Baga Mdluli know ukuthi they came as people who needed land, and Ngoyi. By the way, this dates back to, because the evidence of who owned the land, etc., lies. It's part of the Swaziland monarchy. Usopuza, the old man, Begai chief, Wagangosi, I think is a brother Yaga Sopuza, right? And so his descendants, his children, the children's children, I don't know how old, far back, but they have information dating back to the late 1800s about their land and how big it is. But here's the question. They've been waiting now, they're fighting government now for 25 years. Not only are they fighting government, there's now tension between Abantu Baga Mdluli and Abantu Baga Ngoyi, because Abantu Baga Mdluli know fully well that they came and asked for, like I said, in tribal authorities, you can get land. It's not tribalistically determined. I can get land as umuntu wa Mashego eKZN. Ngenkosini ngiya explain, I go through the process bayanginika. I must behave like a normal umuntu ofikayo ngihlonipha indawo nemi, nemithetho yakhona. They were given land under that shall I call it
Type of an
procedure.
agreement or procedure.
Yeah, which is generally accepted. And then when it came the issue of the land claim, because of the World Cup budgets which were taken from the municipalities to build Lama Stadium and all these other things they needed to do for the 2010 World Cup. And the lucrative looting that happened then. We know in Mpumalanga people died. Jimmy Mhlala died. He was the speaker at the time because he was opposing some of these things. I know the late Jackson Mthembu was one of the people who was trying to fight this situation. And then I think he backtracked when bodies were dropping. And really condolences to Jimmy Mhlala's family again, because they haven't found closure up to today. So I'm just giving you a practical example to say, if abantu bakankosi had plans and strategies, which maybe they may have agreed nama relatives wabo sebukhosini mhlambe Swatini, or amongst themselves, or even with even the current land users, whether they are white or black, to say, okay, as soon as the land claim, they had started economic plans, business plans. So as soon as we're done with this process, this is what we actually want to do. The spatial planning specialists and economic development, local economic development specialists and programs. If they had those in place, they had even secured funders. I really want to paint a picture here. What would have happened to all of those arrangements and plans? What difference would those, plans have made to their lives economically? So it's a lost dream for them. It's tragic. They've been fighting this thing relentlessly. Umuntu, who was 50 years old when they started the fight, is 75 today. Ukhathele. Maybe even ubroke, because they've had to take government to court. They are constantly paying lawyers, taking government to court. So I'm helping them now. And I'm helping them because I'm also working with some of my relatives in Mpumalanga for our community claim, Yasemayfen, which is a neighboring farm, commercial farm, to the Yasematafin, Yaga Halls. To Yasemayfen, Begu Yaga Judge Solomon at the time. So, and that has been corrupted. And I'm giving you something, I'm telling you something that how many other people have experienced? 50,000 plus another 25,000 plus.
Almost roughly 100,000.
Almost all the people who claimed land have not seen closure, have not seen finalization. But here's the big issue. Let's say, being black people, we inherited poverty in '94, right? And the largely white, the white population, to some extent the Indian population, to another extent, smaller extent the colored population, but mostly the white population, inherited the opposite of poverty. And so if we were to follow the political guidance, which is, come vote for us, we're going to help you get back your land, we're going to create jobs, we're going to, build an economy, we're building a new South Africa, you're now free, you're equal to the next person, blah, 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 gender issues, this and that. And you're sitting now 30 years down the line, and the same people who told you, promised you that, are the same people who are now refusing you. Is it wrong to interpret it that way? But if for no economic benefit, why else then would you have land? Besides ukuthi ufuna indawo yokuhlala. Thina ngesintu siyazi ukuthi la ngihlala khona yila ngisebenzela khona. Amasimu wami maybe 5 kilometers if I'm unlucky, but otherwise I can live in a place nali isimu lami ngiyalibona lapha. So me going to work is right here, because work is something you do for you to carry on living a good life and being healthy. That's work. It's not about getting. If you get paid for work that you do, that's a plus, that's a bonus. So work is just something you wake up and do. Nobody has to pay you for work so that uzodla, ulime uthini. But if that was taken away from you violently by colonizers who don't look like you, are white, and you call them racist, etc., and you justify their hatred, that's fine. Then another person who looks like you who's black says, no, come on guys, this is what we're going to do, support us, and you do support them, and then they bring you even more suffering in the process of fighting. Now you even have to fight this black person who said that they were going to help you. It demonstrates the complete dishonesty around this entire land restitution process. Also because I don't know, maybe it exists, I haven't seen it, and I'm very detailed when I do my research. I haven't seen it. Along with the land restitution process, is there an economic plan, like I was saying earlier? They encourage you to come and claim your land. You inherited poverty, ignorance. Mhlambe in your family, you are the only one who fundile. That's a big burden. We all had to do that. When the show good bayakhula, bayagcoka amajezi esikoleni. When would you, I mean, in 1994, 98, you didn't have enough knowledge, experience about this kind of economy that we're now living in, because no longer living in the economy that we're living in when colonizers arrived, to actually say, okay, now that I've got my piece of land, this is what I was going to do. And so it was very important and critical for government to have an local economic development plan together with the land restitution plan. Otherwise, there was no point in doing it. As we now know, there was no point in doing it because all it has done, it has resulted in corruption. Massive corruption. Stealing of the people's land. In some cases, there was even collusion between the white owners who were agreeing to the process and the government people and politicians and the bureaucrats and the politicians. There was collusion. There would be lots of exchange of monies between them, inflating prices, etc. And so my thing is really, we don't need any further evidence to say that this process is not going to yield the results it was supposed to yield. It was not intended to. Because if it was intended to, if the original plan by the politicians and the ANC in particular, who said that, this land restitution plan they have is going to work and this is what it is, and put a law in place to enable it, there's clear evidence that they had no intention of being genuine about that process, because you then get the land and then what? You don't have the resources, like I was trying to explain. You didn't have the skills. Very few black people. There were black people who knew what to do when they get a piece of land. They had, business experience, entrepreneurial experience, but there were not that many. Majority, overwhelmingly, wouldn't know what to do with that land. Even just the relationship with money is something that as black people we are still grappling with. You know what I mean? You give me an amount of money, I don't even know where to invest it, I don't even know what to do with it. All I know is let me pay my debts and my school fees and all of that. We have a deep problem with money and land and assets, because these are things that we were dispossessed of. But the lack of economic planning around land restitution, to say, now you have the land, here's a team, each clan, each community that manages to get their land for, out of this land restitution process, here's a team of people we're giving you. Whether it's developers, whether it's economists, whether it's engineers, whoever, entrepreneurs, funders, whoever it is that's going to help you. But here's, we're going to help you. Did the Land Affairs Department have such a team internally to say, now that here's the process, it's successful, here are the people that you should work with? There's no such a thing. So do you see the dishonesty of even starting the land restitution process? The whole thing was a lie from the get-go. That's what I'm saying.
They're saying here many traditional leaders, especially in KZN, have made it clear that they intend to lodge land claims. King Goodwill Zwelithini, the late, together with the Ngoyi Trust, intends to lodge a claim for possibly the entire province of KZN, including the Durban Metro, as well as sections of the Eastern Cape, Mpumalanga, and the Free State. The aim of the proposed claim on behalf of the king is to claim land taken from the Zulu Kingdom during the colonial period, as we were saying earlier, from 1938 onwards. First by the Voortrekkers and then the British. Indeed, President Jacob Zuma has been encouraging traditional leaders to make such land claims. In his speech back in the National House of Traditional Leaders in 2014, he told traditional leaders to get good lawyers so they can put in land claims. But according to the Restitution Act, only people who are dispossessed of land after 1913 qualify for restitution. If the king were to lodge a claim for land lost in 1838, that claim will not be valid. The same applies to any other traditional leaders who tried to claim land lost before 1913. Section 2 of the Restitution Act confirms that only people who meet the following requirements can lodge land claims. Sure.
Right? And on the back of that, like I was explaining, Swaziland has claim through the I think he was a prince, the guy brother Gasopuza, the Nkosi clan, because they are an extension of the Swazi royal, the monarchy. They obviously have an indirect claim on that land, right? Lesotho, same. There's some boundaries that are contested. KZN is contesting boundaries going up to Mpumalanga. Beyond their current, the current map. They have further contestations of other pieces of land. I think Free State, Mpumalanga, I can't remember, even Mozambique, southern Mozambique, right? I don't know what's going to happen. I'm not sure what the current Isilo, whether he's going to continue with, the work that his father started to say, look, we want to claim back land dating back to not 1913, but when our problem started and we started losing land. And then again, of course, the individual Amakosi, who also know the demarcation of their land, are saying, no, but we don't need a permission silo. All we need is silo to fight for us to be able to open, for government to open up the process. But what we do not need is a silo to tell us our land, because you understand how the Zulu nation was formed. There were various clans with their own autonomous, even up to now, they still have a lot of autonomy. Ingonyama Trust is basically like an extension of municipality. They don't really tell Amakosi what to do and what not to do, they almost like how can I put it, like your tenant, not what's the opposite of a tenant? Like a landlord. Yeah. But, they don't encroach on the powers of Amakosi who are leading in the areas. And so for me, like the disheartening thing about this is that we're not having the right conversations about this. Like I'm saying, that this land question is really about our economic futures. It's really, really about even our current lives. I mean, our current lives have already been squandered. The last 30 years, we were busy squandering our lives. So we can only talk about today and tomorrow. We can't even talk about the past except to analyze it. So for us to correct this situation, we're going to have to somehow, again, form some sort of civilian structures, but through maybe business, shall I put it, maybe values, to say, look, everybody who has these 25,000 people, these 50,000 people that have not heard from the land claims process, why don't we come together, establish trusts or whatever vehicle, and then fight a coordinated fight for our land and be really astute about it. But while we are doing that, have development plans so that we are ready, have shovel-ready projects that we are conceptualizing now, properly design them, bring all the experts into the process, and say, yes, we have a legal team that's pushing government so that we can finalize the process, expose whatever corruption happened to frustrate our claim, and then get our land, those who still want the land. Because remember, there's freedom about, do you want the land or do you want money? And then after and then when that process becomes successful, those who want money from the family get their money. That money is divided, and they subtract some of the land in exchange for the money. They sort that out. What are we left with? Those from the claimants who want still the land. Then by the time that success happens in the courts, etc., they've got shovel-ready projects. We get financiers.
And then we're ready to work the land.
We line up funders.
Because as we were saying earlier, that even when we were dispossessed of the land, the Afrikaners already had plans on what to do with our land.
And the
immediately
British,
after, and the British,
they knew.
As they got rid of us, immediately they started implementing.
Listen, they started fighting over economic land rights, because land rights are economic rights. When was the first gold discovered in Barberton? Not discovered, of course. We knew there was gold by the Europeans. Mining, the actual mining. I went to school in Barberton. I should know this, such a disgrace. It's because I remember in 1984 when I started going to school in Barberton. It was 100 years. 1884. 1884. I'll be wrong, but prove me wrong. 1884, the first mining started in Barberton, gold mining, right? And already when that was happening, and by the way, that was not the first commercial mining in South Africa. The first commercial mining, I think, was copper around Northern Cape somewhere. I can't remember, but it was not gold. So the first gold mining.
It was 1885. Barberton became a municipality in 1904.
I said 1884.
At first it was just a simple mining camp, but grew when Edwin Bray, a prospector, discovered gold in the...
Prospector discovered gold.
Can you imagine? Can you imagine? Disrespect, you know what I mean? But anyway,
disrespect.
In the hills above Barberton in 1885.
Yeah.
And with 14 partners, started the Sheba Reef Gold Mining Company.
Fought with partners. There's no mention of government, Paul Kruger, Liz Mang, whoever was, an Afrikaner leader there. No. It's business. That's why I'm saying this land discussion, this land restitution thing needs to come from an economic business point of view. We need to mobilize all the disgruntled land claimants and really start to be very intentional and deliberate and plan and be sophisticated. There's so many things, like I was saying in the previous, the other episode that we had recorded, that the people of Hammanskraal can solve their own water problems. We can solve our own electricity problems, can solve our waste problems easily. There's so much technology, it's not even funny. All that's required is let's get the money, let's get the governance structure, and let's get people who respect governance. But now you're working for this entity. Salary budgets way too. Find a way of living on your, proper governance structures. Let's go back. Get a strong team of lawyers. Proper lawyers, not these lawyers who are always, I always say in South Africa, when you have a lawyer, you must oversee the lawyer. Ungamvumeli attend any meeting without you. Don't ever allow that. With the opposition. I'm telling you, every meeting you're going to have with the opposition, I'm there. Because these South African lawyers are the first ones to sell you. Bathanda imali ngendlela very unhealthy. Probably like the oligarchs and the globalists. They'll sell you out. We have a proper legal team. Listen, all the areas where we have problems in South Africa, we have problems because of the politicians. Even if it's not a government problem. Because they encroach on every aspect of your life. From birth to death, right? They must give you a birth certificate when you're born. They must give you a death certificate. You can't run away from them. Washata kumele bakunike certificate. Waphasa esikoleni kumele bakunike yonke leyo nonsense government. I think government will be fine in the future if we keep them there. Aba issue ama death certificate nama birth and divorce decrees and marriage certificates, university degree. Yeah, I think they must stick to that. The rest basiyekele sizenzele. We really, really need a very tight economic plan, geographically area specific. And in South Africa is a small country. You can drive around South Africa, in a week or two?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Or a week even.
Yeah.
Maybe 2 weeks with breaks. So we're not a big country. We can literally design our own macro economic plan. And then fit in the local economic design into the macro plan. The macro plan is just a simple thing like, okay, now we've all come together, we've got land claimants from all 9 provinces. We get somebody to map it. We have a full map of all these pieces of lands, right? We know what's happening on those pieces of lands. We've got geological studies on them. We know what's underneath the soil, what's on top, what's around, what's toxic, what's not. Like we have a clear picture of that land. And then we decide, okay, in this side, we can generally do manufacturing of, let's say, textiles. This side, we can generally maybe manufacture steel products. This side, maybe, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
We basically decide, that's the macro plan, generally. Then in between, what brings these different provincial plans together will be the logistics, the value chain, right? And after that, we then have the LED plans for each piece of land that's been claimed. To say, now that we have a macro plan, you guys in this area of Northwest, okay, now ama industries that on a macro level we agreed on for you, what's good for your area. Agriculture, agro-processing, mining, processing. So it doesn't require government. What we need as land claimants and people whose economic, whose business and economic and entrepreneurial lives have been frustrated by lack of access of land, we need to just put up a strong fight in the courts, follow up on the paper trail of these applications, and basically get that land. But the decider will be what happens once we have the land. If we don't have those plans beforehand, we might as well not even bother with the process. Siqhubeke sifaka ama-CV kuma-company lawa asekhona existayo sifuna imisebenzi ngoba clearly, we would not have had a plan. And so I'm very passionate about that. And that's why I'm continuing with the Nkosi clan to help them where I can. Even if it's just to use my voice. But, I'm very convinced that the sooner we realize as South Africans that we have the capacity, we have all these laws, someone is not implementing them. We are not pushing for proper implementation. We don't even, listen, as black people, do we even have an oversight structure right now? Have we established a structure that is going to sit with this database? We don't have. Not a single one. Not a single one. Let alone, let's not even talk about political parties that everybody depends on to say, solve our problems with. But they've created majority of our problems.
We have to solve them ourselves. We have to stand up now. And who are we entrusting to solve these problems for us? Because clearly the politicians are not interested.
But this is our land. We say we are patriotic, right? We say we love our country. We want to defend and protect it, its integrity. But we're not doing anything to actually drive our own development. Akekho umuntu ozofika akudevelophe emhlabeni.
Yeah, akekho.
Aga exist. Umuntu makafika athi, no, I want to help you. You must know there's something that they want.
Yeah.
So when are we going to get it right and just collaborate? Because what is Parliament for? They make laws. That's all. They're supposed to have mechanisms in place to monitor the implementation of the laws, to look for loopholes where the law is not correct, to say, okay, amend it here and there. But they're not doing that even. Because, you know why? I'm going to say it again. And the people who keep saying this is not true, I think they need to tell me why they're saying that. Because I know there's a few people who contest this argument that I always put forward. These laws, because we are not part of making them, we don't know them. They are imported to our parliament by people carrying briefcases. It's exactly the same as COVID. We had this conversation in the other episode,
yeah.
And we were talking about how is it possible that South Africa became part of, a global effort to force people to take an injection for a disease they don't know. There's claims that this disease is new.
Excuse me,
thank you very much. And so because we don't have any role to play in the lawmaking process, we then become victims of what happens after those laws have then been put in place. Because the government and the politicians have got the SAPS. They have the cops to monitor implementation of laws on their behalf. Who do you have to monitor implementation of the laws? So that's my thing. Whether you're discussing business, the economy, whatever, all these laws that are frustrating us, that are a stumbling block to our development, we need direct access to those laws. We need to be able to pass, and we, as a citizen, you need to be able to submit a draft to say, I'm not just criticizing this law, I'm saying this part and that part are not right, are unconstitutional or obsolete, which means they're no longer valid and relevant to society. Therefore, I'm saying this is how I want the law to now look. I'm even giving you signatures of people that I've spoken to in my area. Until that happens, there's no point, because we are electing people to go to parliament and councils to pass laws that we don't know.
And people who understand those laws have got loopholes. on how to bypass them and make money out
But
of
they
them.
designed them.
Not even millions, billions.
They
actually
designed the
even
law.
designed them,
They
yeah.
designed the law, give it to them, because all you need is a committee to agree. Then the committee takes it to whatever, and then it goes to NCOP. They come back, they call sham hearings. But people don't even attend the hearings because they don't understand what's going on. They understand the process, and all of that.
And bayazi and benza ngamabomu.
So I'm saying that this land restitution process, we actually can intervene.
Nah,
I know it's difficult. It's not easy.
but it's doable.
It's doable. These databases are there. Remember, people had to apply.
Yeah.
Every application had to be recorded. Let's hope they've got it somewhere in a cloud now and not in physical files where a fire might, risk them, their integrity. But why can't the land claimants come together? Why can't the land claimants have a really holistic solution? Yeah, it won't be perfect, but it will be an attempt, and it will be something to hold on to say, listen, we've got something tangible. We have actual plans. We've already applied. We are in the system. Now we need to fight for, whatever went wrong to be corrected. We need to fight hard. Because each clan and claimant is fighting individually in their little corners. And you know what they do? Most of them call the politicians to come and help them fight. You get where I'm going with that? You're calling the cause of your problem, the creator of your problem. It's like me being married to a guy who beats me up every day. And every day I'm negotiating with this person. You know what I mean? Like it's the same crap. I'm negotiating with the perpetrator. So the land claimants are now negotiating with the perpetrators to help them resolve the claim process for them to get the land. The same people who corruptly made sure they don't get their land.
So you're a part of two land, no, not class acts, claims, right? So it's the Ngoyi one.
The
and
Ngoyi one I'm not part of.
Oh, you're not a
The
part
other
of.
one
You're just
is-
assisting them.
Yes, I'm working
Okay.
with them as a community. They approached me a few years back. And yeah, some of the processes I can't really speak about because I need the express permission.
Okay. But le enye yakini, ne?
Le enye ye community.
Okay.
Yasema, even yeah, well, it's so there's I think people claim in different contexts, right?
Yeah.
So where I grew up, it was a commercial farm, like Halls, like the Halls farm in Matafin.
Yeah.
In Mayfair, it was a commercial farm, avocados, oranges, all sorts of things, mostly oranges. And so we stayed there because my grandfather was a laborer on the farm. So besinomuzi on the farm. Fortunately, like we had houses built for us by the farmer, brick and mortar houses with electricity, by the way. And so that one is a community claim because
Okay.
wonke umuntu had a right to a portion of that land because they worked there and we lived there. We provided accommodation. And then you get the Nkosis, who are now claiming as a nation almost, as a clan.
Okay.
So you do get a lot of, you get like farm workers who have lived, who were dispossessed from a farm, like on my mother's side. There's that scenario where we lived as a Shamwari Game Reserve. That's my ancestral land, maternally. But that's also where my mother was born by the same one of the white guys who got the land. Right? So it's like crazy.
Yeah.
So I'm a direct descendant of, slave master type of situation. So where else will I go? I mean, I'm stuck in South Africa. I must sort out my problems.
What do you do if you're claiming the land back which now has minerals?
Doesn't matter what it has. Minerals are not your most, yes, of course, it's the most valuable, right?
But you're
Let's say
claiming
there's
the
gas.
top part of the land.
No. When you claim land, you're claiming. So let's say here's your land here, or your land is a size here. Here's your land, right?
Yeah.
It can also be round. So it's called airspace. You know, in
Okay.
aviation, they call it airspace.
Yeah.
So South Africa owns its airspace. Every country owns its airspace. And that airspace is also calculated according to the map
Okay.
demarcation, right? Including even water.
Yeah.
I don't know how it works, but there's, like for instance, with the sea and rivers and all of that, there is some sort of way they work out. Uguti, okay, so here's South Africa. We've got the west, south, and east coastlines, right, at the tip of Africa. the southernmost tip of Africa. And so we own, I don't know how many kilometers of the sea from our coastline into the sea. It's general global rules. That's how. So when you claim your land, you're going to own even the airspace above. Because remember your privacy, which is why people can't
fly drones and on people's
because your privacy is the airspace you occupy, the universe you occupy. It's not just the piece of land. So if there's
minerals underneath,
it's yours. All of that, and I don't know how detailed the documents are at the restitution process documents, but they should be detailing that. I would imagine they detail that.
But what if you've been you are part of a claim of land that has been mined, and it's been mined for all these decades, and it has produced lots and lots of profits, even for international companies?
So I don't know how they work out, like the people who take money.
Yeah.
I would imagine they use probably the normal land evaluation, processes over and above how much economic activity has been taking place on that land since you were dispossessed. In this case, because you are forced to claim only from 1913. So let's say from 1913, they'll probably backdate and all of that, predate. But I don't know how they calculate how much, and that's also at the bane of the discussion with the Ngoyi land. Uguti, what concessions were made? I don't know. I must actually do some research into that. What concessions were made around that? Let's say you're claiming land in Carltonville, and there's a lot of gold mines there that have been mining for decades. What happens?
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not too sure about that. Do they work out share prices according to which date? Who owned that mine? Because businesses can be sold, and often mines do. They change hands from this owner to that owner, this company. Company laws also have changed what the Companies Act was saying in 1913, if it was there, compared to what it's saying now. So that's a complex side, which I'm not too au fait with, but I do know they obviously have a formula, because they do have a formula to calculate those who want to be financially compensated.
I'm looking forward to us having a part 2 of this land conversation.
Yeah.
But I'd also like for us, the next episode, to focus on the South African Constitution. I think a lot of our young people out there, even a lot of us who are older, we just hear of the South African Constitution, but we don't really understand.
And we don't understand its role.
Yeah. And even what is in the Constitution. I'd like for us to touch on that.
Although people should just go and read, guys.
Yeah, but sometimes we're lazy.
I know, but like, let's be fair. Like, for how long are we going to spoon feed? Who spoon fed you?
I get you. We have to do the work ourselves, and we consistently do the work ourselves. As I keep interviewing you guys, I'm learning. I'm learning a lot.
I learn a lot from you. Me and you exchange a lot of complementary information and knowledge. Why? Because you come with your own powerful self, with a lot of experience, knowledge, wisdom, everything, intuition, everything. And I come with my bit. And then it's an exchange. Then there's fairness. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's what I was that's what I was talking about when I said work. When you get paid for what you do, which you classify as work, you're lucky.
Yeah.
It's a lucky day you're getting paid. But work is not something you get paid for. I mean, my father taught me that from a very early age. If you're going to wake up early, the early bird catches the worm. Prepare food, be ready for your day. What am I going to do? So people must learn to read. Dr. Joe Dispenza, one of my favorite neuropsychologists. I
love Joe Dispenza.
What's his big thing? In the age of information, ignorance is a choice. I'm sorry. There's audio books, lots of audio books on the internet, So if umuntu can read, okay, and also I don't take this thing about illiteracy. I'm sorry. You can call me whatever you want to call me. I've been a taxpayer for a long time in this country since I was very young. We've been paying for ABET. Uguti, you voted for corrupt people. And I remember Mandela is the one who pushed that ABET thing. to say, look, we need to bridge the gap between people who can't read and whatever. My grandmother was too old, she can't bother reading. I have a duty to tell her what's going on, yes, because she was too old. But we are paid for a bit. Why abantu bangahambi, guys? By a school, and I'm sick and tired. Let me tell you, we are not going to progress as Africans for as long as we keep on nursing each other's low self-esteems and sensitive ama-cons wethu. Kumele sinyathelana ama-cons. Wena funda uzofundisa abantu bakho la ku virtual mkhukhu, right? I'm very happy you're doing that. I sort of do it because it's just my second nature. But I really get angry when I talk to people who can't exchange with me. Because then, Mina, what do I benefit?
So what I love, Mina, is the fact that these videos are going to exist forever. And we've never really documented our history because Africans have always been people who pass on information orally, right? Even Nokoko, the great Credo Muto, says so.
Yes.
But I think right now that should change. So what I love is these videos are going to exist forever.
Forever and ever and ever and ever.
You understand?
And
so,
all the wrong things we say.
On all the wrong things we say.
Record.
But then at least we've given you a gist of some stuff that you can go do your own research on.
And peer review us.
Peer review us.
And
exactly.
criticize.
Exactly.
Yeah. But don't be rude and stupid.
Yeah.
And I also believe that really this is the time for us to remove our ideological barriers. We've got nothing to benefit. I mean, Ugutu Sontapi, what you believe in, I think generally we all agree on the greater good.
Yeah.
We all know what's good and what's bad. We all know what's wrong and what's right. So let's cut the ideological barriers.
Political barriers.
Religious barriers, racial barriers, gender barriers, class barriers. And agree that, listen, let's come together now too. Because No, I wanted to say something very bad. Sisentweni is serious manje, like it's bad. I mean, if you look at the unemployment figures, it's scary. It's so scary. You can't. I'm lucky. I think I'm a lucky person because in my immediate family, everybody is able to survive on their own. We're not well off. We're all girls at home, including my mom. My dad is way too old. He's taken care of somewhere. But we're all able to, even my dad is able to take care of himself. Some small private pension that he kept for years. And so I'm lucky. I count myself lucky. None of my sisters were retrenched during the last 3 years of the economic collapse. I think I'm the problem in my family. I'm the black sheep from all perspectives. So everybody kind of if everyone else is fine, then everybody's fine. I can sort of hustle my way through life. But it's dire. We are in a very dire situation. And my stress now, especially with this land discussion, my stress is that we're moving further and further away from each other. These globalists are succeeding.
In their plans.
No, they are succeeding. They've managed to divide us. There's this digital divide. Ungena into people's houses and you're visiting somebody or you go into a meeting, everybody's busy on their phone. There's less and less communication. So when are we going to come together and solve our problems? When are we going to do that? We're constantly waiting for someone to bring us a solution. We're looking for a solution for ESCOM from outside. As though, don't we have engineers about qualifier every year, like my university? What are they doing? I'm trying to understand the electrical engineers. The apartheid government was able to mobilize all its scientists that they produced from their universities deliberately in various areas, medicine, the various engineering spaces, healthcare, agriculture, and all the other sciences, chemical industry, very well developed in South Africa by that evil apartheid government, right? Why are we not doing that? Why are we not coming together like I'm saying? We really, 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 really need to start breaking down the barriers because we're all dying in our own little corners. There's tens of thousands of claimants, families, communities who are frustrated to the core. Abasazi nokuthi bayenzeni. Abanye bayasaba even. to reopen the process, because there's also been a lot of division through the corruption of the process, where they would take maybe some of you in your family or your community and pay you off so that you step away, you leave the process, you know what I mean? And then, so Laba who were paid off are now fighting the ones who are not paid off. The ones who are not paid off are now scared, you know, they're genuinely committed to this cause. They're scared to go back and... But if we all come together and sbaningi, we'll be able to drown out the other voices. I really see actually an economic opportunity. I do. There's a massive... There's an opportunity in every problem, right?
I totally agree.
Every time there's a problem...
There's an opportunity for entrepreneurs
there's an
to come with a
economic...
solution.
Yes. There's a
And
business...
make money out of it. Empower the people.
Exactly, and empower themselves first and foremost, and then the environment. So I just think we are blindsiding ourselves. There's a solution. There's a lot of opportunities, business economic opportunities, because this is land we're talking about. Sihle as a complainer which we can afford a rent and it like goal. Some of the positives of the fourth industrial revolution or the robotics, artificial intelligence era, there are positives, but then there are negatives. But some of the positives that can work anywhere now. All I need is internet access and energy and electricity, right? There's people claiming land. Go and help a community to resolve their land claim. In return, they'll give you a small piece of land. You go there, you build all your off-the-grid stuff. You can have there's many ways to get internet. As long as you have electricity, you can get the internet. You don't need to get it from any major internet service providers. I have lots of friends who are internet service providers, independent. You can use microwave, you can use satellite, you can go lots of independent routes, and you've got your own internet, you've got electricity, and a piece of land where all you're going to pay is whatever community contribution for your common joint infrastructure that you'll be sharing with the community. But you can produce, your own water. So I do feel like we as Black people, we're failing each other and ourselves. We really need to... I mean, you can't have a country with so many growing problems, and the only thing that's growing in tandem with the problems are the complaints. We're just complaining. I get so exhausted listening to the complaints. That is why I try to be part of a solution all the time.
Congratulations to the current generation of Limpopo. Proud of you guys for developing your villages, creating mansions in your villages, taking your pieces of land and creating suburbs in Limpopo. I'm seeing a lot of it happen also in the KZN. I think there's a lot to learn from all of you guys, what you're doing.
Yeah.
Because I think we've just been brainwashed to all be coming into the cities. I love the fact that you can go back home, negotiate with the chiefs, or even if you have to spend a bit of money, it's not a lot of money like you can spend a piece of land here in Johannesburg.
Yeah.
But the amount of money that you can get, 1,000 squares here in Johannesburg, back home you can even get a 10-hectare land.
Yeah.
That you can create something amazing, and I see it with you guys in Limpopo. You're doing it. You come to Joburg, you make the money, you go back home every weekend, or you go back home every month, and you're building. And you're not just building mediocre stuff. You guys are building suburbs in Limpopo. I'm just looking forward to be seeing what those villages are going to be looking like 10, 20, 30 years from today. I'm really proud of what they're doing.
Do they have water, electricity in those villages?
The guys are doing well, and they're coming together because they've gone to Joburg, they've studied, they've got the degrees, and some of them are business people. They're coming together and they're empowering back home.
This is exactly what I'm saying. And there's no need to fight over land, right? Because of what me and you were discussing now. How many frustrated land claims are there? At least 80,000. That's pieces of land. If you can go as a land surveyor, what do they call, town planner, an engineer who's been involved in spatial planning, local economic development, just identify one of these families and say, listen, I want to help you unlock this land. We need to get this piece of land. Why? Because I've got expertise in development. Let's work together. Let's have a 10, 15-year plan. Because I think the other problem is our short-termism.
Yeah.
We're very short-term. Like, I'm not going to do something with you unless I get money now. Uzoyithatha phi, like kubani if it's an entrepreneurial project.
Tina, we're working with the people with our crowdfunding platform on stockfella.com. We've got a brand new stockfell. It's called Noble Property Stockfell. Go research it, read the Constitution, understand it, get a legal opinion so that you understand why you're getting to be a part of our Noble Property Stockfell. 15% annual return starting from as low as 10,000 rands.
Nice.
You don't even have to own land. You don't have to own any piece of what is this, erf, or you don't even have to have a title deed at our upcoming Ngonyama lifestyle estate. But for those who've invested in getting their pieces of land, congratulations, all of you guys. Investment starts there from 200,000. Now, this is for the owners of land.
Yeah.
200,000, 300,000, 250,000, etc. with the different pieces of land, and they vary and they change.
Nice.
Get in touch with www.ekasinobleproperties.com. So I've just gotten into property development. It's hardly been 2 years. I'm learning quite a lot.
Very
and
nice.
I'm looking forward to doing more of this. And while I attain all this knowledge, I pass on to all of you young guys out there, and I inspire a lot of us who are able to at least come together with a common goal to take the land back and develop the land.
Exactly. You've created economic opportunities. You've created a future. You know, it's a long-term investment. That's exactly what I'm talking about. So these land restitution failures by the politicians and the corrupt government people are a gift for us.
This is MANDISA. I'll see you on the next episode. We're discussing the South African Constitution, and one of the episodes we're still going to go back on the part 2 of this land issue. This land issue is very big. It's probably going to have a part 3, part 4, part 10.
We're going to, yeah.
You know what I mean?
It's like Big Pharma, yeah.
Yeah.
I also just wanted to please ask you to allow me to pay my condolences to Tina Turner's family, because you know Tina Turner is my aunt.
I don't know.
I'm lying.
You're going to trend, yeah. Go tweet.
I'm lying.
Oh, okay.
I'm lying. I managed to convince kids in boarding school.
Oh, good, she was your aunt.
Yeah. Ngabatshela the year I was leaving. You know, boarding school, you stay there forever. It becomes like your home.
Which boarding school did you go to?
I went to Barberton.
Oh, Barberton, okay.
St. John's.
St. John's, okay. Oh, that's why I was
Missionary.
just
St. John's Missionary.
I went to a central, secondary, Pitori Social Nguve,
Nice.
Central.
I know about it. I
Oh,
don't
you know
really.
about it.
Yeah, it was.
Central.
I don't know whether it was notorious or popular.
It was notorious.
Not popular.
It was popular also.
Yeah.
Guys who went to Central, guys, let me see in the comment section. You remember about Otsakayo Sative Centrale, Otsale Fating Lanuerelane, Otsa Opana Misita Trene Amanuere, Otsa. But Pok Mchana, man,
You see,
boarding school trip.
you see, that's okay. So I just wanted to say condolences because I'm really in mourning.
Yeah, man, I'm sorry.
Tina Turner, to me, is just like one of those women who really, really, really inspired me. Really inspired me. Like many women have inspired me, but Tina Turner for me is like right on top there. So I'm crying.
May so rest in peace.
Thank you.
Rest in peace, Eusebius Makaiser. He was a peer in the industry, in the media
Yes.
space.
Oh, yes.
We all came up together. He was an intelligent mind, incredible
Same age
broadcaster.
as you?
Yeah, 44-year-old brother.
Eusebius was
Certainly.
amazing. I remember I had an interview with him
was
once.
amazing.
And he wanted to talk about feminism and whatever, and I don't know what other issues there was something going on in Gauteng, and I needed to comment. And then he was like, "Oh, Mandisa, I can't have you here and not ask you about some women and gender issues." I'm like, "Please, I'm so getting tired of this topic." But anyway, and then he was like, "So I'm, as a gay man, this and that and this and that." I was like, as a gay man, you just answered yourself. You're a man. Your sexual preference, Eusebius,
Yeah.
has got nothing to do with your male privilege. If you choose to be gay or you are gay, that's private, right? And you have a right to do that, and that's great for you. But you're a man. Don't come and say, "We're now na power." You. When people see you walking there in the street, they see a man. Ndoda nje, ubaba womuzi. Baboni power. Bababona mina, they just see weakness. So don't start.
I miss
So
him, man.
that's he was the, and he laughed. He was and I just said it. I wasn't even thinking about it. And then afterwards I thought, oh my God, he's gonna come down on me.
And he would.
And he did it.
He used to go crazy on Twitter, man. Jeez.
Oh, he was
I miss him,
amazing.
man.
He was amazing.
Rest in peace, bro. May your soul rest in peace. You're an incredible soul. It was really great to be your peer in the media and broadcasting space in South Africa. You'll forever be remembered for being that sharp mind, shot from the hip, and got a lot of people's emotions Yeah, Eusebius was that guy. You guys
Yeah.
know what I'm talking
He'd
about.
rile you up.
May his soul rest in peace. Check out an episode he did with Penuel a couple of months ago.
Yes.
We also did an episode together last year with
Nice.
Penuel as well on the
Nice.
virtual Mkuku. Go check out that episode as well. And to his family, condolences.
Yes.
Thank you guys. We'll see you on the next episode. Siyabonga, Sis Mandisa.
Thank you so much. Thanks a lot. It's been great.
Nkulunkulu
Thank you.
Thokoza, Thoko.
Magwande.
Magwande. Makukhanye.
Makanye.
Danko. As a-
Isithunzi is new.
Ama 2000 would say danko.
Athi danko.